Hey, Sip and Talkers, welcome back for another deep dive. You know, we love to geek out about all sorts of things, and today is no exception. Especially since we're giving a shout out to our awesome listeners in Taiwan. You guys are the best.
It's amazing to see how many people are tuning in from Taiwan. It really makes you realize.
Whoa there, before we get all philosophical, let's get our drinks settled.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to have my iced coffee extra shot, of course, because, well, you know me.
And I've got my trusty green tea, keeping me zen and ready to break down these complex topics.
Speaking of complex U.S. politics, it's like trying to explain the plot of a soap opera to someone who just tuned in.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
Right. You've got your Democrats and your Republicans, the two main parties. They might seem like they're from different planets sometimes, but they both have a huge impact on how things run in the U.S.
Okay, so imagine this. You walk into an ice cream shop, right? And you've got your classic flavors, your chocolate and vanilla. Democrats are kind of like that adventurous newfangled flavor you see. Maybe some funky swirl with like cookie dough chunks and sprinkles. They're all about using the government to make life better for everyone. Think things like universal health care, fighting climate change, and making sure the super rich pay their fair share in taxes.
And then you've got Republicans. More like your good old reliable vanilla. They prefer a smaller government role, lower taxes for everyone, and often focus on traditional values. They tend to have a lot of support in rural areas and among business owners.
See, this is where I spill my drink every time. Every single time.
Are you all right over there? Need a towel?
Yeah, give me a sec. I swear, I'm not usually this clumsy.
Okay.
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Now, where were we? Oh, yeah, the political scene. So you got these two flavors, but sometimes they surprisingly swirl together.
Exactly, especially when it comes to national security. If you bring up something like China, both Democrats and Republicans often see eye to eye. It's like they put their differences aside and put national interests first.
Totally. Take the whole chip control thing, for example.
Yeah.
The U.S. is being really careful about selling those super advanced computer chips to China, kind of like guarding a top-secret recipe. Both parties are totally on board with that move.
That's because they both see China as a major competitor on the world stage, not just in economics, but in military power and technology, too. So keeping those high-tech chips out of their hands is a way to protect America's advantage, stay ahead of the game.
Okay, so that's U.S. politics in a nutshell for our Taiwanese friends.
Mm-hmm.
But now let's flip the script and try to explain things from the other side of the Pacific Taiwanese politics. What's that all about?
All right, imagine trying to explain American football to someone who's only ever watched soccer. It's a whole different ballgame. Taiwan's got its own unique political landscape shaped by its history and its relationship with, well, you know who...
Yeah, China. So instead of Democrats versus Republicans in Taiwan, you've got the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, and the Kuomintang, or KMT. They've got some similarities to the U.S. parties, but with their own twist.
The DPP leans toward independence for Taiwan. Think democracy, human rights, and a bit of skepticism when it comes to China. They're kind of like the U.S. Democrats in that sense, advocating for social progress and individual freedoms.
Then you got the KMT, who generally support closer ties with China, even the idea of unification eventually. They put a lot of emphasis on tradition and stability, so maybe they have a bit of a Republican vibe going on there.
But here's the thing. It's not as simple as just left versus right in Taiwan. Their history is so intertwined with China's, but they've also developed their own distinct identity. It's a real push and pull.
Right. It's like they're asking themselves, are we Taiwanese or Chinese, or both? That debate has been going on for decades and makes it super hard for them to present a united front, especially when it comes to dealing with China.
Exactly. Plus, let's not forget that China's been trying to influence Taiwanese politics for years. They've got their own agenda, and they're not exactly subtle about it.
It's like that friend who's always trying to subtly or not so subtly get you to see things their way, Just constantly dropping hints and trying to steer the conversation.
Yeah.
And that definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
Absolutely. It's almost like there's this undercurrent of worry that China's ideas are slowly seeping into Taiwan's political fabric. Some people call it the Red Scare, a fear that China's communist ideology could undermine Taiwan's democratic values.
Whoa, that's heavy stuff. I mean, how do you even wrap your head around all of that? Maybe we need another round of drinks. What do you say?
Let's hold off on the refills for now. We've got a lot more to unpack here. What really fascinates me is how these political differences play out in real life, It's one thing to talk about parties and ideologies, but how does this actually affect people on a personal level? I remember this one time...
Me first. I remember this one time when I was visiting family in Taiwan, and I totally stumbled right into the middle of a heated political debate. It was like walking into a lion's den.
Oh, no. Did you accidentally spark an international incident?
Huh? No, thankfully not. But let me tell you, it was intense. the passion, the arguments, the way everyone saw China, it was so different from anything I'd experienced back home. It really hit me how personal these issues are for people in Taiwan. They're not just abstract political concepts. They're about identity, family, and the future of their home.
That's a really important point. Sometimes we get so caught up in the big picture stuff that we forget about the human side of things. These political debates have real-world consequences for everyday people.
Right. And speaking of real people, I had this friend, Micky. He's an absolute whiskey fanatic, like seriously knows his stuff. You should totally check it out.
That sounds awesome. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. But before we get sidetracked by whiskey dreams...
Right back to our deep dive. We've thrown a lot of information at you guys, but trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to U.S. and Taiwan politics.
Exactly. We've only scratched the surface here. There's so much more to explore, so many different perspectives to consider. It's funny how we throw around terms like left and right in politics, but they can mean totally different things depending on where you are in the world.
Right, like what's considered super liberal in the U.S. might be totally mainstream in Europe. And then you got places like Taiwan where the whole left-right spectrum gets flipped on its head because of their unique history and relationship with China.
Exactly. It's like trying to use the same map to navigate a bustling city and a remote jungle. The terrain is just too different.
And even within the U.S., the meanings of left and right have shifted over time. I mean, can you believe there was a time when the Democrats were considered the party of the South and had, well, let's just say less progressive views on race?
Yeah, it's wild how much things change. It just goes to show that political parties aren't set in stone. They evolve and adapt and sometimes even switch sides on major issues.
Totally. And that's why it's super important to keep that in mind when we're trying to understand politics in other countries. We can't just slap on those familiar labels and assume we've got it all figured out.
Absolutely. We need to be open to the fact that different countries have different historical experiences, different cultural values, and different political priorities. What might seem like a black and white issue in one country could be a whole spectrum of gray in another.
Okay, so we've talked about how tricky it is to label political parties, but what about the people who actually vote for them? Like, what makes someone lean towards the DPP or the KMT in Taiwan?
That's a great question. It's a mix of things, really. You've got generational differences with younger voters often being more drawn to the DPP's pro-independence stance. Then you've got regional differences with some areas having stronger historical and cultural ties to mainland China.
So it's not just about some abstract political ideology. It's about people's personal histories, their family ties, even where they grew up.
Exactly. And let's not forget about economic interests. Someone might support a particular party because they believe it will benefit their business or their industry.
It's all connected, isn't it? Politics, economics, culture, history, they all intertwine to create this complex tapestry that shapes a country's political scene.
Beautifully said. And I think that interconnectedness is what makes studying politics so fascinating. It's not just about who's in power, it's about understanding the forces that shape those power dynamics.
Okay, we've explored U.S. and Taiwan politics. We've talked about how tricky those left-right labels can be, and we've even shared some personal stories to bring it all to life. But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to address.
You're talking about the giant panda in the room, or should I say the dragon across the strait.
Exactly. We can't talk about Taiwanese politics without acknowledging the looming presence of China.
Yeah.
And let's be real, this isn't just political posturing. China is actively trying to exert its influence on Taiwan.
Right, and they've been doing it for decades, using a multi-pronged approach, economic incentives, military pressure, and even information warfare.
It's like they're playing a game of chess, strategically moving their pieces to try and control the board.
And Taiwan's right there in the middle of that chessboard, trying to navigate these crazy geopolitical tensions while holding on to its own autonomy and democratic values.
It's a high-stakes game, and the consequences of each move are huge. And this is where things get even trickier for Taiwan's political parties. How do you respond to a powerful neighbor who's constantly pushing your buttons?
That's where the internal debate about national identity comes back into play. Those who favor independence see China's actions as a direct threat to their very existence.
While those who want closer ties might be more willing to play along with China's demands, hoping to keep the peace and maintain stability.
And trying to find a balance between those two viewpoints? Man, that's no easy feat for Taiwan's leaders. They have to juggle domestic pressures, international alliances, and the ever-present threat of China retaliating.
It's like walking a tightrope across a canyon during an earthquake.
That's one way to put it. But it does capture the precarious position Taiwan finds itself in. They have to be strategic, resilient, and most importantly, united even when they disagree.
And that's why understanding the nuances of Taiwanese politics is so crucial. It's not just about following election results. It's about understanding the forces that shape those results and what they mean for the region and even the world.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that Taiwan is not just a pawn in some global power struggle. It's a vibrant democracy with its own unique history, culture, and dreams for the future.
And it's about understanding that their fight for self-determination is something that resonates far beyond their little island. It's a reminder that democracy is precious and fragile, and that it needs our constant attention and support.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You know, it's interesting to think about how the U.S. and Taiwan approach their relationships with China. On the one hand, you have the U.S., this global superpower that's not afraid to throw its weight around.
Yeah, they see China as a rising threat economically and militarily, and they're not shy about flexing their muscles to keep them in check. Sanctions, tariffs, military exercises, you name it. They're not afraid to play hardball.
But then you have Taiwan, which is in a much more delicate position. They're this small island nation right on China's doorstep, and they have to tread very carefully.
It's like they're trying to dance with a bear, you know?
Yeah.
They want to show they can move on their own, but they also don't want to step on any toes and provoke a reaction.
And that delicate dance is reflected in their internal political debates. You have some who want to stand their ground and push back against China's pressure, emphasizing Taiwan's unique identity.
While others think it's best to try and keep the peace through dialogue and economic cooperation.
It's this constant push and pull that makes Taiwanese politics so fascinating to observe. It's like a microcosm of the larger global struggle between democracy and authoritarianism.
And it's a reminder that even the choices made by a small island nation can have ripple effects around the world.
Absolutely. Because their fate is intertwined with the interests of major global players like the U.S., Japan, and even Southeast Asian countries.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. Why should we, the everyday folks sipping our coffee or tea, care about what's happening over there in Taiwan? What's the takeaway for us?
Well, for starters, Taiwan is a powerhouse when it comes to producing semiconductors. Those tiny little chips that power pretty much everything around us, our smartphones, laptops, cars, you name it.
Right. And if there was ever any kind of conflict that disrupted that supply chain, the global economy would be thrown into chaos.
Imagine a world without smartphones, laptops, or even modern cars. It'd be a major step back.
And beyond the economic implications, there's the whole issue of democratic values. Taiwan is a shining example of a thriving democracy in a region where authoritarianism is unfortunately on the rise.
They've shown that it's possible to transition from a one-party state to a multi-party democracy, and they've done it all while facing intense pressure from China.
It's a beacon of hope, a reminder that democracy isn't some preordained destiny. It's something you have to constantly fight for and defend.
And if Taiwan were to lose its democratic freedoms, it would send a chilling message to other countries in the region who might be striving for a more democratic system. It would be a major setback for freedom and self-determination.
So the bottom line is, what happens in Taiwan matters. It matters for our economy, it matters for our values, and it matters for the future of democracy in Asia and beyond.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, understand the complexities, and engage in constructive dialogue about these issues.
Speaking of staying informed, remember my friend Mickey, the whiskey enthusiast? Well, I just got an update.
Oh, no, don't tell me he accidentally spilled his precious whiskey collection while filming.
Huh, not quite.
Yeah.
It seems like his YouTube channel is still under construction. Guess building a whiskey empire takes a little more time than he anticipated.
Well, you know what they say, good things come to those who wait. But in the meantime,
we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on U.S.-Taiwan relations? What questions are still bubbling up in your mind?
Share your insights on social media, tag us, and let's keep this conversation flowing.
Knowledge is power, and understanding is key.
And hey, maybe someday Micky will be sipping whiskey and reviewing the latest gadgets powered by Taiwanese chips on his YouTube channel.
Now that's a thought.
Yeah.
All right, Sip and Talkers, it's been great chatting with you all about this fascinating topic. We'll be back soon with more deep dives and thought-provoking conversations.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep sipping.